My grandfather threw 5 coins onto the dusty floorboards and spoke in a voice cold as ice. "Pick them up. If you're going to beg like a dog, you might as well learn to eat off the ground." I was just 14 years old at the time. My father had just hanged himself. My mother was bedridden with crippling depression, and my 2 siblings and I were slowly starving to death inside a house the bank was about to seize. I crawled at his feet, swallowing my tears, and picked up every single loose coin. But what he didn't know was that the humiliation of that very day created the man I am today. My name is Walter. Let me tell you how a boy who once scavenged for pennies on the floor became the owner of a multi-million-dollar cattle empire, and how I made those who once looked down on my family bow their heads in regret. If you're listening to this from anywhere in the world, please leave a comment and subscribe, because there are truths that need to be shared, even if they might shake your faith. There are stories that, no matter how painful, simply must be told. But then came the misfortune. 2 years of drought killed the crops. Then came the blight. It ate what was left. The debts started to tighten, the middlemen collecting the bank on our backs. My father lost almost everything. Almost. Because the house where we lived, that good brick house with a porch out front and 4 large rooms, had been a gift from my paternal grandfather. He had given it to my father when he married my mother. My grandfather Arthur was still alive, but he lived far away, in another county, and didn't have much contact with us. The house was ours. No one could take it. It was the only asset left from the good times. That morning in February was different from all the others. Every day my father would wake me up before the sun rose for us to go to work. He would get up first, light the kerosene lamp, come to my corner, and call me softly. "Walter, get up, my son. Let's work." And I would get up, still sleepy, but I would get up. It was the routine. My father's voice was my alarm clock. My brother Ethan, 11 years old, was also starting to go to the field with us, learning the heavy work. Charlotte, at 9, helped my mother in the house, cooking, washing clothes in the creek, taking care of the chickens. We worked from early on, everyone. It was farm life. But that morning I woke up alone. And it wasn't early, no. It must have been close to 6 o'clock, because the light was coming through the cracks in the window. The rooster had crowed a long time ago. I sat up in bed confused. Why hadn't my father woken me up? We had overslept. He never let that happen. He was a man of routine, of responsibility. I got up still a bit dizzy, put on my denim pants, put on my thick shirt, put on the old boots that were already begging to be retired. Ethan was already awake too, sitting on the edge of his bed, finding it strange just like me. We looked at each other without understanding. I left the corner and went to my parents' room. The door was ajar. I pushed it slowly and looked inside. My mother, Mary, was there sleeping alone in the bed, wrapped in the quilt. My father's side was empty. I thought he had already gotten up, that he had let me sleep a little more for some reason. I went to the empty kitchen, stove off. No sign that anyone had passed through there. I went outside the house. The cold of February cut my face. The ground was white with frost, crunchy under my boots, but the sun was already starting to warm up. I looked at the yard, nothing. I went to the barn. The cows were there waiting to be milked, with their udders full, uncomfortable, but my father wasn't there. Ethan came behind me, already with a worried face. He was smart. He understood when things weren't right. We went back to the house together. We entered the room again. This time I shook my mother's shoulder. "Mom, Mom, wake up." She opened her eyes slowly, still lost in sleep. "What is it, my son? Where is Dad? He didn't wake us up today." I saw the confusion on her face turning into worry. She sat up in bed, looked at the empty side, at me, at the window showing the day already bright. "What time is it? It must be 6, something. The sun is already high." She got up quickly, still in her nightgown. Charlotte appeared too, coming from her corner, already awake, with that serious way of hers. We started looking. We called James. James. We looked in the shed, in the vegetable garden, in the outhouse, back in the yard. Nothing. My mother was getting nervous. Ethan looked at me, waiting for me to say what to do. It was my mother who remembered the old hayloft at the back of the property near the woods. We hardly used that loft anymore. It was kind of abandoned. It served to store broken tools and some bales of old hay. But sometimes my father went there when he wanted to be alone thinking. My mother looked at me and said, "Go see if he's there. Take Ethan with you." We went. Ethan and I walked fast across the yard. We passed the pasture, entered the little trail that led to the loft. My heart was starting to beat faster. Now Ethan was by my side, quiet, but I saw that he also felt that bad sensation in the air. We got close to the loft. The door was closed. I stopped in front, took a deep breath and called out, "Dad, are you there?" Silence. I held the wooden latch and pushed the door. It creaked and opened slowly. The strong smell hit me, a strange smell of moldy hay mixed with something sweet and sour. The morning light entered through the cracks in the roof in thin beams, and that was when I saw it. My father was hanging from a rope tied to the ceiling beam. Let me tell you, there is no way to explain what happens to a person in a moment like that. The world just stops. The sound disappears. The air vanishes. You stand there, looking and can't believe what you are seeing, because that can't be real. But it is. But it was. My father's body swayed slightly with the breeze coming through the door. His feet were bare, a few feet off the ground. His skin a strange color, kind of purplish. His head twisted to the side, his tongue out, swollen and purple, his eyes open, glassy, looking at nowhere. I don't know how long I stood there. Could have been a second, could have been an hour. My legs wouldn't obey. They trembled so much I thought I was going to fall. There was a buzzing in my head, so loud it blocked out everything. I heard Ethan gasp beside me, a low sound of someone who took a punch in the stomach. Ethan started to shake beside me. I heard him whisper, already crying, "Walter," and that was what made me react. Suddenly, out of nowhere, my legs moved on their own. I entered the loft. "Stay there," I told Ethan, but he didn't obey. He entered too, because he was also a farm boy. He had also seen death, just hadn't seen this. I went underneath my father's body. I was crying a lot too. I held his legs and tried to lift. Ethan came to help, grabbed the other side, but we couldn't do it. He was too heavy and we were shaking too much. I let go, looked for something to cut the rope. I found an old sickle. I climbed on a crate, reached the rope, and started to saw. Ethan held the crate steady underneath me, even shaking, even with his eyes full of tears. He held it. The rope broke and the body fell heavy. We went to the floor together. I hugged my father. He was cold, icy, hard. Ethan knelt on the other side, put his hand on Dad's arm, crying loudly. Now we stayed there, the two of us, not knowing what to do. And that was when I saw the letter on the floor. I grabbed it quickly and stuffed it in my pocket before Ethan saw. "Ethan, go get Mom," I said, my voice coming out hoarse. He looked at me, his face wet with tears, and ran out. I heard my mother's scream from afar. She came running, Charlotte behind her. When they entered and saw, my mother let out that scream I will never forget. She threw herself on the body. Charlotte stayed at the door, still, white, eyes wide, but she didn't cry, didn't scream. She just stood there processing, understanding what that meant for us. The neighbors came because they heard the scream. Women praying, men with grim faces speaking, low. Suicide was a mortal sin, honey. The worst shame. We had become the cursed family. They took my mother inside by force. She didn't want to let go of the body. She screamed. She struggled. It took 3 men to tear her away from there. I stayed with some neighbors who covered the body with a sheet. The mark of the rope on my father's neck was deep, purple. His eyes were still open. I closed them with my hand. The skin of the eyelid was cold, smooth. They buried my father the same day, in the late afternoon, before the sun set. The pastor didn't want to hold a service. He said that a man who takes his own life does not deserve God's blessings, that he cannot be buried in consecrated ground. They buried him there in the corner of the cemetery, in the piece reserved for sinners, for the excommunicated, for those the church had rejected. Shallow grave, simple coffin made in a hurry by a carpenter who charged dearly and did a bad job. Few people went to the funeral, the closest neighbors, some relatives, but everyone looking like they were ashamed to be there, afraid of catching the curse. My mother wouldn't stop crying, a low, continuous cry that never ceased. Her eyes were swollen, red, dead inside. Ethan and Charlotte were glued to me, holding my hand tightly, shaking with fear and cold. They threw dirt on the coffin, and it was quick, without prayer, without a real goodbye. My father, who had been a respected man, who had had land and money, who had helped half the world when he could, was buried like a dog, in a forgotten corner, with the mark of sin forever. We went back home when it was already getting dark. Ethan and Charlotte were too quiet, each in their corner. My mother sat in a kitchen chair and stared at the wall, without blinking, without speaking, as if she had gone away with my father and had only left her body there. I didn't know what to do. I was the oldest, I was the man. And now, what were we going to do? How were we going to live? I put my hand in my pocket and felt the paper of the letter. That letter I had hidden, that no one knew existed. I squeezed it at the bottom of my pocket and said nothing to anyone. I couldn't open it. I was too afraid. Can you imagine carrying a secret that heavy at just 14 years old? That letter is going to change everything for Walter. But what he discovers inside it later is even more heartbreaking. Stay with us, because his struggle is just beginning. Afraid to read my father's last words and discover that he had given up on us, that we weren't reason enough for him to stay. The days that came after the funeral were the strangest of my life. The house had turned into something else. My daughter. It wasn't a house anymore. It was like a cemetery of living people. My mother didn't leave the bed anymore. She simply didn't leave. She got up only to do her business, but otherwise stayed there lying down, facing the wall, as if the wall had something interesting to see. But there was nothing. It was just a wall, with old peeling paint. She ate almost nothing. I took a plate, left it on the edge of the bed, came back hours later, and the plate was there the same way, or else with one forkful taken, just to pretend she had eaten. She was withering away, honey. Every day she got thinner, more faded, like a candle melting slowly, and she didn't speak. When I asked something, she just looked with those empty eyes and turned her face back to the wall. Charlotte and Ethan were lost. Charlotte, poor thing, with those 9 years of hers, tried to help. She swept the house, washed the pots, gathered eggs from the chickens we still had, but she did everything too quietly, too seriously. And every now and then I saw her stopped, looking at some corner, thinking. Ethan stayed closer to me, following me around the house, as if he was afraid of being alone. At night, he woke up with nightmares, screaming. I went there, calmed him down, but I saw that he couldn't forget what he had seen in that loft. And me, Lord have mercy, I was falling apart. I had to do everything really. I woke up before the sun rose, went to milk the 2 cows we still had. The milk was little, but it was something. Then I let them out into the pasture, which was getting dry because no one had taken care of it properly. Came back, lit the fire, made weak coffee, cooked the beans that were starting to run out, called the siblings to eat, took a plate to Mum who didn't eat. Ethan woke up with me. We worked together, each doing their part, because a farm kid doesn't stay still, is born knowing how to work. But the biggest weight was on me now. The decisions, what to do, where to go to get money. When there was some time left, I gathered the dirty clothes that piled up and went to the creek to wash. Ethan went along, helped me carry the bundle, scrubbed on the lye soap we made ourselves, beat it on the rock until our arms hurt. Icy water cut our hands, left them red, cracked. Clothes for 4 people plus dirty sheets was heavy duty. I walked back with the wet bundle on my back. Ethan, helping to carry one end, wrung it out until the last drop came out. Charlotte hung it on the clothesline with us. In the afternoon, when possible, I went out to try to get odd jobs. I went to the neighboring farms, offered service, weeding pasture, fixing fences, carrying things. Some gave me some loose change, others paid me with food. 2 pounds of flour here, 1 pound of rice there. Worked until the body asked for mercy, until the back throbbed with pain. I arrived home at night, dead tired, and still had to make dinner. There were nights I sat in the dark kitchen and cried alone. I cried from fatigue, from fear, from despair. I was 14 years old, honey. 14. I was still a boy, but I had to be a man, and I didn't know how. I didn't know what to do. I looked ahead and only saw darkness. The letter burned under my mattress. Every day I put my hand there and felt it folded, crumpled, but couldn't take it out, couldn't read it. Had a fear so big, a fear that paralyzed me, fear that my father had written that he couldn't take us anymore, that we were too much weight, that he had given up because of us. That thought ate away at me, made me feel guilty. Could I have done something? Could I have helped more, worked more, said something that made him change his mind? A month passed, then 2. The situation only got worse. The food ran out almost entirely. Only a leftover of beans, a handful of flour, and nothing else remained. I went to the general store in the village about 2 miles from home. I arrived there dirty, with torn clothes, barefoot, because the boots had holes for good. The owner of the store, Mr. Frank, had known me since I was little. He looked at me with pity, but also with suspicion. I asked for credit, explained the situation. He shook his head, said he couldn't, that my father already had an open account there, that he had died owing and that he wasn't going to increase the debt. I begged, said I had 2 little siblings starving. He sighed, took 1 pound of cornmeal and a small piece of bacon, wrapped it and gave it to me. Said it was the last time, that if I didn't pay, he wouldn't sell me anything else. I went back home holding that package as if it were gold. I made grits with the bacon to give it flavor. We ate, but it didn't kill the hunger. It was too little for 3 people. My mother didn't even touch it. It was that night that I built up the courage. I don't know what changed. Maybe the despair, maybe the hunger, maybe the loneliness that was swallowing me. I waited for Ethan and Charlotte to sleep, sat in the kitchen, lit the old oil lamp that smoked and smelled bad, fetched the letter. My hands shook so much the paper shook, unfolded it slowly. My father's handwriting was crooked, rushed, stained in some places as if water or tears had fallen. I started to read, and with every word my heart tightened more. My father asked for forgiveness, said he was weak, that he hadn't withstood the weight of shame, of debts, of failure, said he had lost everything, that he saw no way out, that he had tried but couldn't. And then came the part that broke me inside. My daughter. He told that he had gone to my grandfather's ranch. His father. He had made that long, humiliating journey to ask for help. I remembered that day, not the trip, because I didn't even know where he had gone. But that day my father came back different, with a heavy soul. Without looking us straight in the face, he had knelt in front of his own father and begged, told of the debt, the family in need, the small children. And do you know what the grandfather did? You know, he sent him away, said that a real man doesn't ask for help, that he had to fend for himself, that if he had gotten into debt it was his problem, said he wasn't going to waste money on a failure of a son. I know what you're thinking. How can a father be so cold-blooded? But you see, my friends, wealth can sometimes turn a man to stone. To him, love was a weakness, and he had carved out his heart long ago in exchange for those cold, unfeeling dollars. My father wrote that that had been the last straw, that he had returned home knowing there was no way out, that he had no more strength. The letter ended like this, and I will never forget these words. Take care of your mother and your siblings, Walter. You are stronger than me. Forgive this weak father. Forgive. I dropped the letter on the table and cried. I cried a lot. Cried from pain, from anger, from pity. Pity for my father, who had carried all that alone. Anger at my grandfather, who had turned his back on his own son. And fear, a lot of fear, because now I knew that that man, that grandfather I barely knew, had cold blood, and I knew too that we had no one at all. I took the letter, folded it carefully, and put it away again. But now it was different. Now I knew, and that knowing weighed like a stone in my chest. I sat there until the lamp went out for lack of oil in the dark, listening to the heavy silence of that house. And I thought, I can't be weak like my father. I won't be a coward to abandon our family. I can't give up. Another week passed. We were surviving as best we could, with the odd jobs I found here and there, with the little I gathered. But it was all very uncertain. Honey. One day we had, another we didn't. We lived on a razor's edge. It was on a hot afternoon that he appeared. I was in the yard fixing the chicken coop that had a hole in the screen, the chickens escaping through there. Ethan was beside me passing the wire. Suddenly, I heard the noise of a horse arriving. I looked and saw a fat man getting off a brown mare, sweaty, with a leather hat on his head and a saddlebag hanging on his shoulder. It was Mr. Donald, the richest man in the region, owner of land, of cattle, of the store in the city. I knew him by sight, had seen him a few times in the village. Big man, big-bellied, with a red face of someone who eats well and drinks even better, wore good clothes, leather boots, a gold watch hanging on a chain on his belly. He tied the mare to the fence post and came walking to the yard. I stopped what I was doing. Ethan stayed quiet beside me. Charlotte appeared at the door of the house, curious. The man stopped in front of me, took off his hat, wiped his hand on his forehead, drying the sweat, gave a smile that didn't reach his eyes. I asked how I could help. He said he wanted to talk to me, that it was serious business. I invited him to sit on the porch. He sat, took the saddlebag off his shoulder, put it on his lap. I stood waiting. He opened the saddlebag and took some papers out. Papers with stamps, with fine print, notary stuff. Started saying he was very sorry for my father's death, that it was really sad what had happened, but that, unfortunately, life went on and business was business. Said my father owed him, owed a lot. Showed the papers, was pointing with his fat finger at the amounts, the dates, the accumulated interest. $3,000, honey. It was a fortune. My head spun. How so? My father had never mentioned anything about owing Mr. Donald. I asked where all that debt had come from. He explained, with that calm voice of someone used to collecting. Said my father had borrowed to pay the other debts, the banks, the suppliers, that he had tried to save the crop, buy seed, fertilizer, but it didn't work, that he borrowed more to pay what he already owed. And it was like that, one loan on top of another, until it turned into that snowball. I said there was no way to pay, that we had no money, that I was working odd jobs to buy food. He shook his head slowly, with an air of false pity, said he understood it was a difficult situation indeed, but that he also couldn't lose his, that he had a family to support, businesses to run. That was when he dropped the bomb. Said my father had given the house as collateral. This house here, the house my grandfather had given as a gift, that he had signed paper, document registered in the notary, that if I didn't pay the debt, the house would go to judicial auction. I felt the ground disappear beneath my feet. The house, the only thing left. I spoke too loud, startled him, said that couldn't be true, that my grandfather had given this house to my father, that it was family inheritance, that no one could take it. He just shrugged, showed the document. It had my father's signature there, a bit shaky, but it was his. I recognized it. It's a cruel reality when the rich prey on the grieving, but keep listening, because this moment of absolute hopelessness is exactly what forces Walter to make a decision that no boy should ever have to make. Cornered, I asked how much time I had. He scratched his chin, looked at the papers, did the math, said it gave 60 days, 2 months to get $3,000 or lose everything. Looked at me, waiting for an answer. I didn't know what to say. $3,000. Where was I going to get that much money? Working odd jobs, earning $5, $10 a day when there was work. He saw I was paralyzed, got up, put the papers back in the saddlebag, put on his hat, said he would return in 60 days to collect or to take the deed of the house, turned his back and walked away, mounted the mare and left at a trot, raising dust on the path. I stood there still like a statue. Ethan came close, asked what it was. I said I'd explain later, but Charlotte had heard everything from the door. She came walking slowly, with that serious way of hers, and asked if we were going to lose the house. I looked at her, at that 9-year-old girl who had already lost her father, who saw her mother wasting away in bed and couldn't lie. Said I didn't know, but that I was going to do everything not to let that happen. That night, after they slept, I went to my mother's room. She was awake, looking at the ceiling. I sat on the edge of the bed, told her about Mr. Donald's visit, about the debt, about the house, waited for her to say something, give some advice, at least show she was listening. She turned her face to the wall, said nothing, nothing at all. It was as if I had spoken alone. I felt an anger rise, honey, an anger I had never felt towards my own mother. Felt like slapping her face, but took a deep breath, got up and left the room. Went back to the kitchen, sat on the old chair that squeaked, put my head in my hands. 60 days. $3,000. How? From where? I thought of everything. Selling the cows, but they weren't even worth $500 together. The chickens, even less. The old furniture was worth nothing. There was nothing of value in that house. I thought of my grandfather, that man who had sent my father away, who had refused to help his own son. Would he help the grandchildren? Did he at least know my father had died? We had no contact with him. He lived far away, in another county. Never understood that story, right? Why did Grandpa give this house to my father when he married and then turned his back when he needed it? What kind of father does that? Gives a gift, but abandons in the hour of need. But he was the only person in the family who had money. That I knew. If I went there, humiliated myself, begged on my knees, Would he have pity on the grandchildren? Would his pride soften in front of 3 orphan children? It was the only chance we had. But the memory of my father's letter came back strong, his words saying how grandfather had been cruel, cold, inhuman. I stayed awake all night thinking, weighing the options. Had to try, didn't I? Even knowing I'd probably be humiliated just like my father was, but I couldn't lose this house. It was all that was left of him, the last piece of the life we had before. If we lost the house, we lost everything. And then where would we live? Under a bridge. When the sun began to rise, I had already made the decision. Would work like a convict these 2 months, save every cent I could. And if it didn't work, if I got close to the deadline and was still missing a lot, then yes, I would go to my grandfather's ranch, would try, would humiliate myself if needed, but wouldn't lose this house without fighting. I got up from the chair, back aching from sitting crooked all night. Went to wake up Ethan. We had work ahead. The next morning, before the sun rose, was already knocking on the doors of neighboring farms. The first was Mr. Carl's, about 1 mile from home. He had a big pasture, always needed people to weed. Knocked on the door of the big house, waited. His wife answered, looked me up and down with that face of pity mixed with disgust. Called her husband. Mr. Carl appeared at the door, still in pajamas, scratching his belly. Explained I needed work. Anything he had. He thought a bit. Said he had a fence back there needing repair, about 1,000 feet. Asked if I could handle it. Said yes. He said he'd pay $20 if I finished in 2 days. Accepted immediately, borrowed the tool from him and went to the back of the property. The fence was all busted, barbed wire loose, posts rotten, sun too hot, burning the back. Worked all day, stopping only to drink water. Hands were raw from messing with wire. Went back home when it was already getting dark, legs wobbling, back aching, like I had been beaten. Charlotte had made food, watery beans with flour. We ate in silence. Ethan asked if I had gotten money. Said I'd receive only after finishing the job. He stayed quiet, but I saw the disappointment on his face. $20 in 2 days, missing $3,000. The math didn't add up, but had to try. The next day, went back early, finished the fence. Mr. Carl came to check, ran his hand on the stretched wire, shook the posts, said it was good, paid me the $20 in dirty bills, put it in my pocket as if it were treasure, went to other farms, got more odd jobs. Cleaning stable at Mr. George's farm, $5. Carrying bags of feed at the village store, $8. Fixing the roof of Mr. Frank's house, $15. Worked from 5 inches the morning until 8 or 9 at night. Came back home dead. Ate what there was. Collapsed in bed. I was a rag. There were days I didn't even bathe. Ethan started going with me on some jobs, the ones he could handle. Held the ladder, passed tools, carried light things. We worked together, quiet, sweaty, tired. At night, we calculated what we had gathered, noted in an old notebook the amounts, added up, subtracted what was missing. The difference remained huge. Charlotte stayed at home taking care of things, the chickens, the food. She traded the leftover eggs, 3, 4 a week, and got some collard greens, some tomatoes with the neighbors. Every cent counted. I gathered everything in an old cracker tin that I hid under a loose board on the floor of my room. One day I fainted in the middle of work, was weeding a huge pasture at Mr. Jack's farm, noon sun cracking the earth. Suddenly, everything went dark, and I woke up lying in the shade of a tree with the foreman throwing water on my face. He told me to go home and rest, but I didn't want to. Needed those $12 of the day. Drank water, ate a piece of jerky the man gave me, and went back to the pasture. 2 weeks passed like this, me and Ethan working like pack mules. Charlotte performing miracles with the food we didn't have. My mother continued in bed, every day thinner, more gone. Her bones protruded through her clothes. No one came to visit. We were ghosts in the region. Did the math in the notebook one night. Had gathered $120 in 15 days. If I continued at this pace, in 60 days would have less than $500. Missing $2,500. Impossible. The math was cruel. There was no way to cheat the numbers. Ethan saw me doing the math, sat beside me, asked if we were going to make it. Looked at him, at that one-year-old boy who had become a man prematurely along with me and didn't know what to say. Didn't want to lie, but also didn't want to take away his hope. Said we were going to find a way, that we always found a way. He hugged me suddenly, tightly, and started crying softly. That broke me, honey. Seeing my brother crying like that, afraid, tired, without a childhood, held him, let him cry, cried along. Charlotte entered the kitchen, saw us hugging, came and hugged too. The three of us hugging there in the middle of that dark kitchen, with a candle lighting, 3 children alone in the world trying to survive. It was at that hour I decided I would have to swallow my pride, would have to go after my grandfather. There was no other way out. No matter how much I worked, no matter how much I killed myself working, I wouldn't gather that money in time. Needed help. And the only person who could help was that man who had turned his back on his own son. The next day, went to the house of a distant neighbor, Mr. Travis, who had a truck, asked if he knew how to get to my grandfather Arthur's farm. He knew. It was heck of a long way, on the other side of the region, 75 miles. Asked if he was going that way any time soon. He said he was making a cattle delivery the following week, passing nearby, asked for a ride. He looked at me with suspicion, asked what I was going to do there, told the truth, ask my grandfather for help, try to save the house. He shook his head, said he knew the reputation of old Arthur, that he was a hard-hearted man, but said he would take me, that he would pass by to pick me up early Thursday morning. Went back home with a tight chest, fear of what I would find, fear of humiliation, but had no choice. Missing 40 days to the deadline, and only had those dollars in the tin. Thursday morning, still dark, when I heard the roar of Mr. Travis's truck stopping in front of the house. Got dressed quickly, put on the least torn shirt I had, combed my hair with a wet hand, took my father's letter folded and kept in my pocket. Would need it, as proof. Ethan and Charlotte woke up with the noise. Explained I was going to grandfather's farm, that I would return the same day if I got lucky to catch a ride back, or the next day, if I couldn't. Ethan asked if I wanted him to go along. Said no, that I needed him there taking care of Charlotte and the house. He understood. Went out and climbed into the truck bed. There were about 3 farmhands already up there, sitting on some hay bales. The dawn cold cut the face. Huddled in a corner, pulled my shirt up to my neck, but it didn't help much. The trip was long, very long. Hours and hours, shaking in that truck bed, the truck bouncing in the holes of the dirt road, raising dust that entered the nose, mouth, stuck to the sweaty skin. The sun rose and went up, heating, changed from cold to heat in an instant. Started sweating, clothes sticking to the body. The farmhands talked among themselves, laughed, smoked. I stayed quiet, thinking about what I was going to say to my grandfather, how I was going to start. Was I going to tell about the debt right away, talk about my father's death first, and show the letter? 1,000 thoughts passing through the head, none of them good. Stopped only once at a little roadside stand in the middle of the way to refuel and pee. Mr. Travis offered me a sausage sandwich he bought. Accepted because I was hungry, stomach growling. Ate fast, thanked him. Went back to the truck. After about 6 hours of travel, Mr. Travis pulled the truck over and shouted that it was there. Jumped off the bed, legs stiff from staying in the same position so long. He pointed to a dirt road that went to the right. Said just follow about 1 mile and I would arrive at my grandfather's farmhouse. Said he would return passing there the next day, early morning, if I wanted a ride back. Thanked him and started walking. The sun was high, hot, burning. The road was long, straight, with fences on both sides and green pasture. Fat cattle grazing, tame. Saw from afar it was a rich farm. The more I walked, the more nervous I got. Heart beating strong, hands sweating. After about 40 minutes walking, saw the farm headquarters. Honey, it was rich folks' stuff. Big house, huge, painted white, with a wooden porch all around, red tiles shining in the sun, new board corral, large sheds, tractor parked in front of one of them, had employees working, horse tied to a post, dog lying in the shade. Arrived dirty, smelling of sweat, with clothes dusty from the trip, feet scraped from the walk in worn shoes. Stopped at the gate, took a deep breath. An old man, an employee by the looks of it, came to the fence. Asked what I wanted. Said I was Arthur's grandson, that I needed to speak with him. The man looked at me suspicious, told me to wait there. Stood waiting in the sun. It took time. Took a long time, about 15 minutes until the man returned and opened the gate. Said the boss would receive me on the porch. Entered, crossed the clean yard, climbed the 3 wooden steps, and there he was, my grandfather Arthur, sitting in a chair with a glass of juice in his hand. Tall man, thin, but strong still. White hair combed back, thick white mustache, sun-tanned skin, light eyes, icy. Wore clean denim pants, button-down shirt, shiny leather boots. Had a hard expression on his face of someone who hasn't smiled in a long time. He looked me up and down, slowly, said nothing. I stood in front of him, waiting. The silence weighed. Finally he asked if it was true I was his grandson. The voice was deep, firm. Said I was Walter, son of James, his son, his grandson, that I had come from afar to speak with him. He took a sip of juice, didn't take his eyes off me, asked what I wanted, straight like that, no beating around the bush. Started to tell, told that my father had died. He didn't blink, didn't react, continued. Said he had killed himself, that he had hanged himself, still nothing. Spoke of Mr. Donald's debt, of the house that was going to be taken, spoke of my little siblings, of my sick mother, of the despair we were living. He stayed quiet, listening. When I finished, that silence fell again, long, heavy, me waiting, heart racing. Then he spoke with a calm, cold voice. Said he already knew of my father's death, that someone had sent word, that he hadn't gone to the funeral, because a suicide didn't deserve respect. That hurt me deeply, but I swallowed it. Couldn't fight, couldn't answer back, needed him. Took the letter from the pocket, the letter my father had left, unfolded it carefully and held it out to him. Said my father had written that before dying, that it spoke of him, that he needed to read. My grandfather looked at the letter, but didn't take it. Said he didn't want to read, that what was written there changed nothing. Insisted. Said it was important, that it explained everything. He raised his hand in a gesture to cut the subject. Said my father was always weak, that he didn't know how to deal with difficulty, that he didn't withstand the pressure, that a real man doesn't give up, doesn't abandon the family, that he had given everything to my father when he married, had given that house, had given land to start life, and that my father had wasted everything. Said it wasn't quite like that there was drought, blight, that it wasn't his fault. My grandfather cut me off, said everyone went through difficulty, that it was part of life, that he himself had lost almost everything once and had rebuilt alone, without crying, without begging for handouts. Knelt in front of him. That's right. I knelt down, joined my hands, looked up into his cold eyes and begged, said it wasn't for me, it was for my siblings, that Ethan was 11, Charlotte, that we were going to be without a house on the street, that he was the only family we had. He drank the rest of the juice, put the empty glass on the side table, kept looking at me kneeling there, begging. And do you know what he did, my daughter? Do you know? He stood up slowly, looking down at me not with anger, but with something worse, complete indifference. He reached into his pocket, pulled out a handful of loose coins, and let them drop. He didn't throw them, he just opened his hand and let them fall like garbage. The coins hit the wooden floor, rolling near my knees. Pick them up, he commanded, his voice cold as ice. I froze. I said, pick them up. If you are going to beg like a dog, you might as well learn to eat from the floor. I felt the blood drain from my face. My pride screamed at me to stand up and run, but then the image of Ethan's hungry eyes and my mother's wasting body flashed in my mind. Shaking, fighting back tears of absolute humiliation, I crawled. I crawled on the dusty porch of my own grandfather's house and picked up the coins one by one, nickel by nickel. $5, he sneered as I clutched the dirty money. That is exactly what your father was worth to me. A weak man raises weak sons. Now get out of my sight before I set the dogs on you. He slammed the heavy oak door, leaving me kneeling there, clutching $5 and a hatred that would burn in my chest for the next 20 years. That kind of humiliation breaks most people, but for Walter, those $5 weren't just coins, they were fuel. You won't believe how he uses this exact moment of shame to build an empire later on. $5, the price of his own son's memory, the price of his grandchildren's survival. Shame, hot and suffocating, washed over me. I wanted to leave them there. My pride screamed at me to walk away. But then I saw my mother's hollow face in my mind. I saw Ethan's hungry eyes, swallowing a sob that tasted like bile. I crawled on the floor. I picked up every single coin, Each one burned my skin like a brand of humiliation. I didn't just pick up money that day. I picked up a vow. I vowed that I would never, ever let anyone make me feel this small again. And I pray that you, listening to my story, never have to taste the dust of the floor while swallowing your own pride. But if life ever forces you to your knees, remember that feeling. Don't let it destroy you. Use that anger as fuel to burn the fire of your survival. I went down the steps, crossed the yard, and passed through the gate. The employee who had received me was there, saw my face, must have seen this 1,000 times, said with pity in his voice that there was a water spout back there, that I could drink and wash my face if I wanted. Thanked him, went there, drank cold water until I couldn't anymore, washed my face, neck, wet my head, sat in the shade of a tree and cried. Cried from rage, from humiliation, from defeat. Had come all the way here, had knelt, had begged and had been treated worse than a dog. Understood at that hour why my father had given up. Understood his pain, the shame, the despair of having gone to his own father and been treated that way. Must have broken him inside. But I couldn't break, couldn't give up. Because if I gave up, who was going to take care of Ethan and Charlotte? Who was going to save the house? Begged God to help my mother get better. That way, she would also help us. Stayed there until the sun began to go down. Had nowhere to go, no way to return. Mr. Travis only passed the next day. Would have to sleep right there in the woods waiting. Walked back to the main road, about 1 mile, found a big tree, lay down under it. Night fell, the cold came, shivered from cold and hunger. Hadn't eaten anything since the sausage sandwich in the morning. Stayed there, curled up, looking at the stars, thinking about how I was going to do now. Would have to do the impossible, because giving up wasn't an option. And maybe you there listening to me are thinking, but what about his grandmother and the uncles who lived in this big mansion there with this grandfather and my mother's family? But the hunger wasn't just in our stomachs, my friends. It was in the silence. Have you ever heard a house so quiet that you can hear your own heart breaking? That was our home. At night, I would lie awake, pressing my hand against my stomach to stop the growling, terrified that if I fell asleep, I might dream of food and wake up even emptier. I began to look at my hands that were just 14 years old, and I felt like they belonged to an old man. I was losing my childhood, day by day, scraping it away with every weed I pulled and every floor I scrubbed. I asked God, why me? Why us? But the only answer was the wind rattling the loose window pane. That silence, it almost broke me more than the hunger did. Wasn't there anyone else to help these children? Well, now it might seem logical to think so, but the truth is much sadder. My paternal grandmother had died before my father got married. I never even saw her face, only knew the name, because my father spoke little, and his brothers were two. 2 uncles who left home, young, almost ran away, the same way my father wanted to do one day. Ran away from old Arthur, from his temperament, from his hardness, never sent a letter, never returned. My father said they were out in the world, but deep down, no one knew where they had ended up. And my mother's family, that's another pain. Her family lived far away, 2 counties over, and contact had ended years before. It wasn't a fight, it was poverty really. Poor people, without money to travel, without telephone, without letter. And when my father started falling into debt, my mother closed herself off even more. Never asked anyone for help, not even her siblings. And after he died, my mother disappeared inside. She breathed, but didn't live anymore. So, yes, we had relatives, but it was as if we didn't. Besides, the relatives didn't even know of our situation. In the end, honey, the truth was only one. We were alone in the world. The next morning, Mr. Travis's truck passed early. Woke up with the roar of the engine, whole body aching from having slept on the hard ground. Climbed into the bed again. Made the trip back the same way. Bouncing, cold, hungry. Arrived there around 1 p.m. Walked the 1 mile home, legs heavy. When I arrived, Ethan and Charlotte ran to the door, saw my face and understood right away. Didn't need to say anything. We entered. I sprawled on the bed. Didn't even care if I was dirty. Told everything. The trip, the beautiful farm, the icy grandfather, the humiliation, the 5 coins on the floor. Charlotte started crying softly. Ethan turned red with anger. Said he wanted to go there and do something. Said it was no use. that man had no heart. Showed the 5 coins, put them in the tin with the rest. $205 was what we had. The following days were terrible, worked more than before, if that was possible. Woke up at 4 inches the morning, went to weed, fix, carry whatever appeared. Ethan went along whenever possible. Charlotte continued taking care of the house, selling eggs, performing miracles with flour and beans. But the money didn't grow fast. $10 here, $5 there, $12 over yonder. Was gathering slowly, painfully slowly. Did the math again. Even working like this wouldn't come even close. It was on a Friday afternoon that it happened. Had gone to Mr. Frank's store in the village to try to buy on credit again. He had denied me last time, but I had to try. Had nothing left in the house to eat. And want to clarify something many people think. But you lived on a farm. Didn't you have chickens? Didn't you have cows? Land? How did you starve? Well, honey, that's something city folks imagine. But whoever lived through hardship in the country knows that having animals is not the same as having food. The chickens hardly laid because they were poorly fed. When there was something left, it was 3, 4 eggs a week. And that doesn't fill anyone's belly. The poor cows were thin, almost dry. The pasture hard like stone, without any strength to give milk. And the land, the land by itself solves nothing. Land needs seed, fertilizer, rain, time, and we had none of that anymore. What sustains a house is rice, beans, flour, a handful of salt, a little sugar, a drop of oil, and all that came from the store. And without money, honey, it didn't come from anywhere anymore. That's why I was there again, at Mr. Frank's door, hat in hand, stomach growling, and that shame that only those who have needed to ask for credit know what it's like. I knew he didn't want to give, but I also knew that if I didn't try, we were going to sleep with an empty belly again. And there's another thing. Yes, I was saving money, had some dollars hidden in that old tin under the board in my room. But that wasn't spending money. It was money to save the house. Every coin I put there seemed like a part of our life I was trying to hold with my hand. I knew that if I started taking from that money to buy food, even if just a little, that little money would disappear in an instant, like water spilled on dry ground. And then there would be nothing left, neither food, nor house, nor hope. So I held on as much as I could, tried to live off odd jobs, barter, eggs, scraps, donations, anything that appeared. That money would only be used if it was a matter of life or death, when there was no other way out. And the hunger we passed was great, but the certainty of losing the house was even greater. It was like choosing which pain hurt less, and the pain of seeing my siblings and mother on the street was the worst of all. That's why I saved, that's why I endured, that's why I had to ask for credit, even knowing he might say no. Arrived there dirty, tired, had spent the day weeding pasture at Mr. Carl's farm. The store was full of people buying. Stayed there in a corner waiting for it to empty so as not to be ashamed in front of everyone. There was a lady there buying several things. Spoke loudly, ordered Mr. Frank to separate flour, sugar, coffee, soap. Woman of some 50-odd years, grey hair, tied in a bun, simple dress but clean, apron over it, face marked by sun, big hands of someone who works. But there was something about her, honey, a firmness, a presence. She looked at me, kept looking. I averted my gaze, ashamed of my appearance, but she continued looking. When she finished buying and Mr. Frank went to bag the things, she came close to me, asked my name. Spoke low, Walter. She nodded, said she had already heard of me, that everyone in the village knew my story. Got even more ashamed. She asked how old I was. 14. Asked about my siblings. 11 and 9. Stood there studying me. Then spoke with that firm voice. Boy, you need real work, not odd jobs, right? I have a boarding house here in the village for drovers, travelers. Need someone to help. Carry guests' bags, clean stable, fetch water from the well, firewood, those things. It's heavy work, but I pay. My heart jumped. I asked her how much. She thought for a moment. $150 a week. But it's not just for you. Your siblings can also come help with what they can handle. I'll provide food for the 3 of you, a clean bed to sleep in if you need it, and payment at the end of each week, $150 a week. I did the math fast in my head. 4 weeks meant $600 a month. In 5 weeks could gather $750, still missing a lot for the $3,000, but it was much more than I was getting with odd jobs. Accepted on the spot. She smiled for the first time. A small smile, but sincere. Sometimes, help comes from the places you least expect. Mrs. Barbara isn't just offering a job here. She's opening a door that will eventually lead Walter to a life-changing opportunity. Let's see if he can take it. Said her name was Miss Barbara, that everyone knew her boarding house. It was the only one in the village. Told me to show up there the next day early morning with my siblings, that she would show the service. The good part is that Mr. Frank heard the whole conversation and, because of that, ended up selling on credit. Still gave that threat at the end, but at least I didn't return home empty-handed. Ran back home, heart lighter for the first time in weeks. Told my siblings. Ethan got excited right away. Charlotte, no. She frowned, worried. And Mom, Walter, who's going to take care of her? That hit me like a rock. I had also been thinking about that since I left Mr. Frank's store. Mom didn't eat right, didn't get up or go to the bathroom alone. It was impossible to leave her alone all day. Explained the sincerest way I could. Charlotte, you're not going to work at the boarding house. You're going to stay with Mom. Take food to her. Give water. See if she gets up a little. Help her go to the bathroom. Keep an eye out. You can do this. It's little strength, more knack. Charlotte's eyes filled with water, but she nodded. She was always stronger than her age, said, "Me and Ethan go to the boarding house," I completed. "We return in the late afternoon. At night I bathe her, clean everything, do the heavy lifting. You just hold the fort until we arrive." Ethan agreed with his head, a bit tense, but firm. We knew no neighbor was going to help. The people of the village carried that dirty shame because of our father's suicide. No one came close, no one asked anything. It was as if we had leprosy. So that was it, the three of us against the world. And so it was decided. The next morning, the two of us went to the boarding house. It was a big house, 2 stories, right in the center of the village. Had a large yard in front, a stable in the back, a well, some fruit trees. Miss Barbara was waiting for us on the porch. She explained the service. Always had about 5-6 guests sleeping there. Drover passing through, salesmen coming from other towns, people traveling and needing lodging. Each paid to sleep, bathe, eat. My job was to wake up early, fetch water from the well, fill the drums, then fetch firewood, light the stove for the cook to prepare coffee. The boarding house had more people working. Had Miss Patricia, the cook who helped Miss Barbara, fat and friendly woman, who sang while stirring the pots, and had 2 young women, pretty, who took care of the rooms and served the tables. Right on the first day, Miss Barbara called me aside and spoke seriously. "These 2 girls are married, Walter, wives of honest workers who come here to earn their bread. You won't be looking with fancy ideas, won't lack respect, won't do anything you shouldn't. Understood?" Said yes, face hot with shame. She continued, "Here is a place of work, of respect. Who doesn't respect doesn't stay." My service was heavy. When the guests woke up, I carried their bags to the horse or car, cleaned the stable, fed the guests' horses, washed the yard, whatever was needed. Ethan went to help with lighter things, sweep the house, wash dishes, peel vegetables for the kitchen staff. We started the same day. Worked hard, but it wasn't like before. Had routine, had a right place, had someone commanding, but without malice. Miss Barbara was demanding, didn't coddle, demanded it be done right, but treated us with respect, never with pity, never with that look of disgust I had gotten used to seeing. And the food, honey, the food was plentiful. She served the guests rice, beans, meat, vegetables, flour, sometimes even sweets, and we ate together. For the first time in a long time, ate until satisfied. Saw Ethan repeat the plate 3 times, eating slowly, savoring with that look of disbelief. At the end of the day, when work finished, we went back home. It was about a 2-mile walk, but it didn't weigh. A full belly gave strength to the tired body, but arriving home was always tight in the chest. Mum continued in bed the same way, as if she had become part of the mattress. Charlotte spent the whole day there, doing what she could. Gave water, helped her get up a little. Thank God, if we grabbed her by the arm, she went where we led. But my sister was a child, was more lookout than caregiver. In the late afternoon, when me and Ethan appeared at the gate, she ran to us, stayed with the fire lit in the wood stove waiting. Knew we would bring food from the boarding house wrapped in a clean cloth, the way Miss Barbara ordered. Charlotte made their little food. Tasty food, you know? But the really good food, with meat and all, was what we brought. It was always the same scene. Charlotte took the package carefully, heated it slowly, and I took it to the room. Sat on the edge of the bed, offered. Mom ate a forkful, 2, sometimes 3. It was more than before, but still little. She chewed slowly, like someone who has no will for anything, with eyes lost somewhere that wasn't there. The worst was the smell. Mom didn't bathe alone, didn't go to the bathroom right. She and the room stank of urine, of old sweat, of abandoned body. Charlotte and I had to bathe her. We lifted her from the bed. She was too thin, too light, her bones showing under her skin. I held her up while Charlotte passed the wet cloth over her body. Mom just stood there, still, looking at nothing, like a broken doll. And there was another thing, something that left me even more lost, more ashamed, more unsure how to act. When Mom menstruated, there were no pads, nothing modern. It was the usual rags. And who took care of that was Charlotte, my little sister of 9 years, small, frail, but firm. She took the dirty rags, washed in the bucket, boiled when she could, changed Mom with a care that seemed like an adult's. Always leaked onto the sheets, always. No matter how much Charlotte arranged the rags properly, no matter how much she tried to change before soaking, ended up running. It was double work. Rags to wash, sheet to scrub, mattress to turn in the sun when there was time. I was shocked, didn't even know where to look. But Charlotte already knew what to do, because before everything fell apart, my mother had talked to her about these things. Woman stuff, as she said, had explained about rags, about washing, about how to manage when there was nothing beyond what God gave. And now it was Charlotte, repeating all that alone, carrying a responsibility no child should have. I helped where I could or thought I helped, but the truth is I felt lost. It was the first woman's body I saw naked in my life, and it was my mother's body, weak, sad, abandoned by herself. It hurt to look, hurt to help, hurt to exist in that room, but we had no choice. We did it because it was our mother, because it was what needed to be done, because if we didn't take care of her, no one would. It was too sad to have to go through that. Tried to make her brush her teeth. I took the brush and a tin of baking soda. Now, before anyone finds this strange, let me explain how it was back then for folks in our situation. Store-bought toothpaste, those fancy tubes you see today, that was a luxury. In the country, when you were broke, you didn't buy that. We used baking soda, or sometimes just plain salt to scrub our teeth. It tasted awful, salty, and gritty, but it was all we had. It was a strong soap, yellow, hard, that served for everything. Wash clothes, wash pots, bathe, and when there was no other way out, it was what remained for oral hygiene. But we knew, deep down, it was suffering. It was very aggressive and strong because of the lye and cut the gums, besides having a horrible taste. We used it, but praying to manage one day to buy a tube of real toothpaste. Toothpaste already existed, sure, but it was expensive, difficult, city folks stuff. Most poor families did what they could. It sounds terrible compared to today, doesn't it? But poverty strips away the right to want and leaves only what you must do. When you have to choose between a tube of toothpaste and a loaf of bread to keep your little brother from starving, you choose the bread, no matter how much your mouth stings. When the soap ran out, we still made a little paste with sifted ash that cleaned the same way. It was like that. It was normal. No one thought it strange. No one complained. Back then, hygiene wasn't a choice of brand. It was survival. We didn't have luxuries like toothpaste or soft toilet paper back then. We used what we had, like ashes for cleaning teeth or corn husks for the outhouse. It was a hard life, but we managed. However, seeing my mother refuse even basic hygiene was heartbreaking. Returning to the subject of my mother, she locked her mouth, locked with a force that didn't seem to come from that weak body. Closed lips tight, turned her face and, no matter how much I insisted, no matter how much I begged, she wouldn't open. Her mouth stayed closed like an iron gate. Charlotte cried softly while helping, getting nervous. Saw Mum that way, more dead than alive, and didn't understand. I also didn't understand how a person could be there breathing, but not be present. How someone could give up on herself like that. But we didn't give up on her. Every day the same routine. Food, bath, attempt at brushing. Every day the same silent resistance, and every day before sleeping I held her cold hand and said we were going to make it, that we were going to save the house, that everything would get better. She never answered, but also never let go of my hand. And time passed like this, week after week. Miss Barbara paid me right, and paid my brother too. It was less, of course, but she made a point of giving it in his hand to teach him to feel the weight of responsibility. Ethan handed everything to me without me needing to ask. Knew every little coin was to save our house. You needed to see his joy when he received the payment, even if it wasn't to spend on what he wanted. And Miss Barbara, in her way, kept an eye on us, corrected when we erred, praised when we did right, treated us like people. On Charlotte's 10th birthday, I ended up commenting to Miss Barbara while carrying water. Spoke without thinking, just to explain why she asked me. Because I was kind of quiet, said it was my sister's birthday. Miss Barbara said nothing at the time, just nodded her head and got that thoughtful look of hers. In the late afternoon, gathered Miss Patricia and the two girls from the kitchen. Made a simple cake, but big, a huge cornmeal cake with sugar on top. When it was ready, she wrapped it carefully in a cloth and said, "Let's take it to your house. Birthday is sung there." On the way to our house, my heart beat hurriedly. No one had ever gone there after Mum got sick. I was ashamed of the smell, the mess, the poverty laid bare. The boarding house was so neat, but Miss Barbara didn't seem to notice any of that. When she entered, looked first at my mother, lying down, pale, then at Charlotte, who had stopped at the door, frightened, and then something happened I will never forget. Miss Barbara bent down to Charlotte's height, held her face with both hands, and said with that warm voice, "My God, what a sweet girl. You're going straight to heaven. Did you know? God loves children who take care of their mother. You are an angel." Charlotte was speechless, eyes filled with water instantly. It was as if someone had seen her for the first time. Really. We put the cake on the table. Miss Barbara lit the candle and started singing "Happy Birthday," loud, firm, without any shame. Ethan joined in. Me too. Even my mother, in her little way, murmured something, maybe following the melody. When Charlotte made the wish and blew out the candle, we applauded. She hugged me, crying softly, then whispered in my ear, asked for Mum to get better, Walter. That broke me in half, and Miss Barbara, who had heard, wiped the corner of her eyes like someone trying to pretend she isn't moved. With time, we got to know Miss Barbara's family too. She had a daughter, Jennifer, a woman of about 30, married, who lived nearby and came to help at the boarding house occasionally. Jennifer had two small children, a boy of 6 and a girl of 4, who ran around the yard when Mum came to work. Also had Miss Barbara's brother, Mr. Robert, serious man, but good-hearted, who appeared always on the weekend to drink coffee and talk to his sister. He saw us working, asked how we were, never with pity, always with respect. We were becoming part of that place, of that family that wasn't ours, but treated us better than many blood relatives. And that, my daughter, that warmed the chest in a time when everything was cold. Another week passed, then 2, then 3. Work at the boarding house continued firm when 10 days were missing to the deadline and I had half the money. It was on a Tuesday early morning that damned man appeared. I was at the boarding house, cleaning the stable, removing manure from guests' horses, heard the noise of a horse arriving in the yard, looked and saw the brown mare, Mr. Donald, stomach churned. He got off the horse, tied it to the fence, came walking to the stable, stopped at the door, that fat body blocking the light, leather hat on head, sweaty face, smile that wasn't a smile, asked if I was preparing to pay the debt, said I was gathering the money to pay. He laughed that malicious laugh, said he doubted it very much, asked how much I had gathered, hesitated, but spoke. He shook his head, laughing more, said I was far, very far, that 10 days were missing and I wasn't going to make it, that the house was going to be his, that he was going to put us on the street. Felt the anger rise, held the shovel handle tightly, knuckles white, but he kept talking, said he had a proposal to make, a proposal that solved everything. Dropped the shovel, paid attention. He came closer, lowered his voice like someone telling a secret, said he needed someone young, smart, brave, someone who knew how to keep quiet and do what told without asking. Explained. He had some businesses in the capital, businesses that needed discretion, special deliveries, picked up merchandise in one place, took to another. Sometimes it was moonshine that had no tax stamp. Sometimes it was stuff that came from smuggling. Sometimes it was document that couldn't pass through official mail. Said if I worked for him making these deliveries, he paid well, very well. Said in 2-3 months I paid the whole debt, still had left over, that he forgave the interest, that gave a chance for me to start over, but had to be now, had to decide now. If I accepted, he gave more time to pay. If didn't accept, in 10 days the house went to auction, stood still processing. The solution was right there in front of me. Easy, fast, but wrong. I knew it was wrong. Smuggling, stolen goods, illegal stuff. If they caught me, went to jail. Was a minor, but went to reform school. Those correction houses everyone said was worse than jail. And if they didn't catch me, was going to become what? Was going to become a criminal? Was going to work for the man who had driven my father to despair? Because I was sure now. Was sure my father had entered this web of Mr. Donald, that had taken money from him, that had sunk deeper and deeper. Opened my mouth to answer, but a voice cut the air before. This boy isn't going to do any of that. It was Miss Barbara. Was standing nearby, arms crossed, hard face. Must have heard everything. Mr. Donald turned to her, smile vanishing from face. Said that wasn't her business, that it was business between him and me. Miss Barbara took 2 steps forward. Even being shorter, older, she seemed bigger than him in that moment. Said she knew him for a long time, that knew his dirt, that knew he lent money with absurd interest, that caught desperate people in the trap, that used everyone until squeezed dry and then threw away. Said that Walter's father had fallen in this trap, had entered this debt hole that only grew, and that, in the end, had taken his own life out of despair. Asked if he had no shame in his face, if it wasn't enough to have destroyed the father, now wanted to destroy the son too. Mr. Donald turned red, spoke loudly, told her to shut her mouth, that she knew nothing. Miss Barbara didn't move, said she knew people in the capital, police people, that if she wanted to make a report about his businesses, about the smuggling, about the loan sharking, she would. Silence fell heavy. Mr. Donald breathed deep, chest rising and falling, anger stamped on face, but he knew she wasn't bluffing. Miss Barbara had reputation in the region, had contacts, knew people. He spat on the ground next to his boot, looked at me with hatred, said I had lost my chance, that in 10 days the house would be his, that he wouldn't have pity, turned his back, mounted and left at a gallop, raising dust. Stood there trembling, not from fear, from rage, from frustration, from despair. He stood on the edge of a cliff right there. Walter almost chose the wrong path out of desperation, but stick around, because the risky gamble he decides to take next is going to leave you holding your breath. Once I had talked with Mr. Robert, Miss Barbara's brother. He explained things I didn't know. I didn't understand. I asked him why, Mr. Donald said the house was already his before even the auction. He said auction in these times is just staging, theater to make everything look like a document. When a man like Mr. Donald said he was going to take a house, believe it, it was all arranged. The auctioneer was his friend, crony for decades, drank at the same table. The judge owed favors. The clerk closed his eyes, and the village people were afraid even to breathe near him. On paper it looked clean. The house went to public auction. Anyone could bid. But in real life, no one dared raise a hand against the richest man in the region. No one competed with the loan shark. Whoever tried to buy something he wanted ended up losing job, credit, peace. That was the law of the land back then, folks. Money didn't just buy acres. It bought silence. It bought judges. And it bought fear. There were no emergency hotlines for poor folks like us. That's why he spat on the ground and said the house was his, because it really was. Didn't matter the auction, didn't matter the value, didn't matter anything. The auction would only serve to put his name on the deed without raising dust. That's how the powerful took things from the poor, by force, by shouting, and with stamped paper, to look pretty. Miss Barbara came to me after Mr. Donald left, put her hand on my shoulder, spoke, voice coming out hoarse, but it was the only chance, was the only way to get the money. She shook her head slowly, said, "No, boy, that wasn't a chance. It was a trap. Your father entered that trap and look what happened. You were going to enter too, were going to sink too. This man doesn't forgive debt." Asked what I was going to do. Then, missing 10 days. It was impossible. She stayed quiet, thinking. then said, "Come with me. Let's talk." Went after her to the boarding house kitchen. Miss Patricia was there, kneading bread. Miss Barbara asked for excuse, called her aside, spoke low. Miss Patricia looked at me, nodded, left the kitchen. Miss Barbara sat on the chair, told me to sit too, started talking, said she knew the boarding house guests, that had contact with many people passing through there, drovers, merchants, peddlers, people traveling, that knew people in other places, said she was going to do something, was going to talk to her clients, the ones she trusted, was going to tell my story, was going to ask for help, a collection, each giving what they could. Wasn't guarantee of anything, but was a chance. Said I couldn't accept charity, that had pride. She cut me off, said it wasn't charity, it was community, it was people helping people. Said I had already proved I was a worker, that was honest, that didn't give up, that people saw that, respected that, and said more, "Pride is good, Walter, but dumb pride is what killed your father. He didn't want to ask for help, didn't want to show weakness, and in the end, gave up everything. You won't do the same. You will accept help, will thank, and will move on. Understood?" Lowered my head, tears came, cried right there in front of her, then spoke, voice coming out low. "My father asked for help." "Yes," he asked. Miss Barbara looked at me waiting, continued. "He went to my grandfather, his father, made that long trip, humiliated himself, begged, told of the debt, of the children starving. And do you know what grandfather did? Sent him away. Says a real man doesn't ask for help, that he had to fend for himself. My father left a letter telling all this before dying. I have it kept until today. Took the letter from pocket, folded, yellowed, torn at the folds from so much opening and closing. Showed it to her. It's here. He asked for help, yes, to his own father, and was humiliated, destroyed. That's what killed him. Wasn't pride, was helplessness. Miss Barbara took the letter, opened slowly, read in silence. Saw her face change, jaw tighten, eyes fill. When finished, folded the letter back carefully and returned it to me. Stayed quiet for a long time, then said, voice choked, "I'm sorry, Walter. I didn't know. I didn't know he had tried, that he had asked for help and had been rejected that way." Wiped the corner of eye with back of hand. "Your grandfather is a cruel man, and your father wasn't weak. He was broken. It's different." She breathed deep, composing herself, continued, "But listen well to what I'm going to say. The mistake wasn't your father asking for help. The mistake was asking the wrong person, a man without a heart. But there are still good people in this world, boy. People who help because it's right, because it's human. And you won't give up just because your grandfather is a bastard. You will accept help from who wants to help you for real. Understood?" Lowered my head. Tears came stronger. Now cried there in front of her from shame, from pain, from gratitude, from fatigue. Cried for my father, for the humiliation he passed, for the loneliness he felt. She let me, said nothing, didn't try to console, just sat there, respecting my pain. When stopped, wiped face with shirt sleeve, looked at her and said, hoarse voice, "Why are you doing this? Why helping me?" She stayed quiet for a while, then answered, voice low but firm, "Because I was also broken people once, already lost everything, already had to start from zero, was widowed young, with small daughter, without money, without anything. And there were people who helped me when I needed, people who didn't know me, but extended their hand. That was the greatest lesson of my life, not about money, but about humanity. When you think you've hit rock bottom, look up, because sometimes the hand that pulls you out belongs to a stranger you never expected. Hold on to that faith. Anyway, now it's my turn to help. That's how the world continues, Walter. That was the greatest lesson of my life, not about money, but about humanity. When you think you've hit rock bottom, look up, because sometimes the hand that pulls you out belongs to a stranger you never expected. Hold on to that faith. People helping people, or at least that's how it should be. Got up from chair, said she was going to start that night, that there were some good drovers arriving, trustworthy people, told me to go back to work, that there was stable to clean. Went back to stable, but now was different. Still had fear, still had despair, but had also something I didn't have for a long time, hope. That night, Miss Barbara started as she promised, had 3 drovers staying, men she knew for a long time, Serious folks passing through there every month, taking merchandise from one corner to another. After dinner, she called the three into the room and closed the door. I was cleaning the kitchen with Miss Patricia, but could hear the murmur of low voices. Half an hour later, the three came out, came to the kitchen, stopped in front of me. The first, Mr. George, tall grey beard, tired road look, put hand on my shoulder, said he knew my father, that he was a righteous man, hard worker, and didn't deserve the sad end he had. Took wallet from pocket, counted $20, and handed to me. Said it was little, but was what he had. The second drover gave $15, the third gave $10, $45, dollars like that in an instant. Thanked, choked up. They nodded and went to sleep. But Miss Barbara didn't stop there. In the following days, she talked to every guest arriving, with clients of the boarding house bar, with acquaintances coming to buy things from her, peddler, merchant, drover, farmer. Every person who had a remnant of humanity in chest helped as could. Some gave $5, some gave $30. Miss Patricia, the cook, gathered $15, dollars she had saved for years. The two girls from the rooms gave $20 together. Jennifer, Miss Barbara's daughter, appeared with $50 her husband had sent, and so it went, dripping day after day. At the end of a whole week, summing everything, donations reached $500. It was a lot of money coming from simple people, but still little compared to what I needed. And only 3 days missing to deadline. It was when Mr. George, that same drover with grey beard, passed by the boarding house again. Miss Barbara called me, said he wanted to talk to me, went to porch. He lit a corn husk cigarette, took some deep drags, looked at horizon like someone weighing the world on back, then started explaining. Said he worked on a big farm over towards the capital, that the boss was going to hold a cattle auction the next day. Young calves, still weak, that weren't good for breeding, and that the rancher wanted to get rid of fast. That's why they were going cheap. He said that if I managed to buy 2 calves for about $400 total and took them to the capital market 2 days later, I could double the money, maybe even more, depending on the buyer. Said if I could buy and take to sell at the capital market 2 days later, could double the money, maybe even more depending on the buyer. But it was risky, very risky. If it went wrong, if a calf died, if the trip failed, if the market was bad, I lost everything. Lost the calves, lost the money, lost the house, and with only 3 days to deadline, had no second chance. But if I worked, I got more than $2,000 at once. It was the only real possibility to reach the amount. Went back inside, head spinning. Told Ethan. Sat in a corner of the yard, away from everyone to talk. Ethan asked what I thought. Told the truth. It was very risky. We could lose everything, but it was also the only real chance to get money in time. Missing $100, math implies profit needed, and only 3 days. At home, told Charlotte, with that serious way of hers, said, we already lost almost everything we have to lose now. Was right. The house was practically lost. If we didn't try, lost anyway. At least trying had a chance, however small. Decided there, the 3 of us, we were going to risk. The next day, very early, went with Mr. George to the farm where auction was going to be. Trip was long, took almost all day in the wagon, but needed to be fast to buy and return same day. Arrived late afternoon, and auction was already starting. Already had ranchers, merchants, people who understood cattle. I was youngest there, by far. Some looked at me with curiosity, others with contempt. Auctioneer was showing calves, one by one, saying starting price, crowd bidding. Best calves went expensive, $800, $1,000. I waited quiet, counting money in pocket with nervous fingers. Towards end, when almost everything sold, brought 2 skinny calves, kind of weak, with dull fur. Auctioneer said, sold the 2 together. Bargain price for whoever wanted to take. Started at $700 for both. No one bid. He lowered. $600. Nothing. $500. Silence. He was going to give up. Passed to next lot. Raised hand, voice coming out low. I give $400. Everyone looked at me. Auctioneer hesitated, looked at rancher, who was owner. Man shrugged, didn't care. Auctioneer banged gavel, sold to young man for $400. Paid. Took rope of 2 calves. Mr. George helped me put them in wagon. Went back to village. Arrived late at night. Took calves to small pasture, Miss Barbara said I could use behind boarding house. Now had 1 day. 1 day only to care for calves, make them presentable, and take to market next day. Was little time, but had to work. I prayed day and night asking for a miracle. My daughter. Only God knows weight I carried. Spent that whole day caring for them. Gave fresh grass, clean water, washed, brushed fur until shined, removed ticks. Ethan helped. We worked non-stop, doing impossible in 1 day. Next early morning, day of debt due date, left for capital market, me, Ethan, and 2 calves in wagon Mr. George lent. Arrived at market when sun was rising. Cattle market was huge, honey, dozens of pens, hundreds of animals, people buying and selling everywhere. Put calves in small pen we rented, waited, passed whole morning like that. Some buyers arrived, looked at calves, asked price, made that face of someone not buying anything, and left. I asked, $1,200 for both. Needed at least $100, profit, gap closer, to close debt. Ethan stood beside me, nervous, sweating, squeezing fingers, until white. Around noon appeared a man different from others, rancher from other region, good hat, clean clothes, way of someone who understood cattle. Came close, examined calves calmly, felt loin, looked at teeth, lifted legs, asked price, $1,200. Spoke firm, trying to show desperation. He frowned, face like someone hearing nonsense. Pay $800. My stomach turned. Said couldn't, that I needed at least $100 more. Implied. He stayed a while thinking, walking around pen, kicking dirt with boot. No hurry. Seemed to be cooking me on slow fire. Then returned. $1,000 is what I pay. Heart sank. $1,000. Summing with what I already saved, gave $2,500. Still missing $500. Didn't close. But if I refused, maybe no one else appeared. Maybe returned home with calves in wagon and lost everything. Looked at Ethan. Poor thing was pale, waiting my decision. Breathed deep, gathered courage I didn't have and said, $1,100, won't sell for less. Man huffed, turned back and started walking away. My heart died right there. Thought had ruined everything. This is the ultimate test of nerve. Most of us would have folded and taken the lower offer. But Walter's refusal here is the difference between losing everything and saving his family. Watch what happens when you stand your ground. When was going to shout, asking him to return, he stopped, stayed instant quiet, thought, and returned. Okay. $1,100, then completed in different tone. Seeing you are alone in this world. Honest boys, need more than me. Almost fell on ground from relief. He counted money, dirty bills, folded, worn, and handed to me, kept in pocket shaking. Ethan hugged me so strong almost knocked me down, crying softly. Went back to village with heart racing. Sun was already falling. Arriving at boarding house, went straight to room Miss Barbara had let us use. Took tin from under loose board, poured all money on bed, added $100, profit part from sale. Counted once, counted twice, counted 3 times to be sure. $2,950. Missing $50 miserable dollars, an amount so small and at same time so cruel. Miss Barbara entered. She stood there, looking at money on bed, thinking, then left, returned with old tin, opened, counted $50 and put on bed with rest. Said wasn't gift, was salary advance I paid working. Said my father would be proud of me, that I had fought like man, that deserved this victory. Me and my siblings also hugged her. Everyone cried there. Gathered $3,000, tied properly and put everything inside thick cloth bag Miss Barbara gave me. But at time to leave, she held my arm and spoke so much in my head that gave me real fear. Fear of walking on dark road with all that money. Fear of losing, being robbed, mugged really, because poor knows danger. Fear of bumping into some soulless person on dirt road. Fear even of unexpected rain. Even sky being clear, starry, without cloud. In end, left money there in boarding house room, locked inside her iron chest. Agreed to return very early next day for us to go together pay loan shark. Was safer that way, and knew she was right. Ethan and I took road back home. Was already night, and even with nothing in pocket, we went fast, almost running. Arrived home panting. Mom was in bed, same place as always. Went to her room, sat on edge, told, had gotten money, told next day early I was going to pay debt, told we were going to keep house. She looked at me slowly, and for first time since father's death, saw sign of life in look. Voice came out hoarse, weak, but came out. Your father would be proud of you, Walter. Cried again. Held her hand, thin and cold. She squeezed back, weak squeeze, but real. Slept little that night. Early morning got dressed, put on least torn clothes I had, combed hair, washed face. Ethan wanted to go along, but said needed him there with Charlotte and Mom, meant for them to take Mom to porch to get some sun, breeze. Miss Barbara was already waiting on porch, holding bag of money, and with her was Mr. Robert, her brother. He had come early, called by her. Miss Barbara saw me arrive and descended steps. Spoke firm. We go together. You won't go alone in this. Need witness. People who saw you pay properly, so this man doesn't invent later that money missing or didn't pay. Mr. Robert agreed, adjusted hat. The three of us walked to Mr. Donald's house. He lived in good house, in center of village, brick house painted with iron gate. Clapped hands at gate. Maid answered. Told us to wait on porch. Heart beat out of rhythm. Anxiety tightened chest. Wanted that to end soon. Mr. Robert stayed beside me. Calm, firm. Miss Barbara crossed arms, serious face. Mr. Donald appeared still in slippers, holding coffee cup. When saw me there with the two, face closed. Didn't like having witness at all. Looked at Miss Barbara with poorly disguised anger. Opened bag, dumped on his porch table. $3,000. Dollars fell in bills and coins, making noise. Mr. Robert approached, observing closely. Miss Barbara too. Mr. Donald put cup aside, started counting, counted slowly, checking each bill, each coin, already separating by values. We saw he looked for error, looked for lack. Anything to say wasn't complete. Recounted, checked again. Mr. Robert followed count, attentive. When finished, stood looking at money with face of someone who lost something, because had lost house he already considered his, had lost chance to profit on our despair. Miss Barbara spoke, cutting voice. So, everything right? $3,000. Dollars, as agreed. He grumbled, yes, entered house, returned with papers, wrote on paper that debt was paid, that nothing pending anymore. Mr. Robert took paper, read aloud, word for word, checking, nodded, was right. Mr. Donald signed unwillingly, stamped, handed me paper. Took that document as if gold. Miss Barbara took two, read again, folded and kept in purse. Going to make copies just in case. Mr. Donald turned red with anger, but said nothing. Mr. Robert also took paper, noted in small notebook, took from pocket. Date, time, amount paid, witnesses present. Closed notebook, put away. Mr. Donald looked at me, voice full of poison. You got lucky, kid, but remember well, in this life luck doesn't last forever. One time you'll need again, and then I won't give chance. Before I answered, Miss Barbara took step forward. This boy won't need loan shark ever again, and if you try to approach him or his family again, we'll have to deal with me and my brother. Understood? Mr. Robert just looked at him firm, saying nothing, but look said everything. I looked at Mr. Donald one last time, looked right in eyes of that man who had driven my father to despair, who had tried to pull me into crime, who had tortured us with that debt, and spoke firm voice. I will never need people like you again. Never again. Left there the three. There is nothing more satisfying than proving your doubters wrong. Walter didn't just pay a debt here. He bought his freedom. But wait until you hear how this victory leads him to the love of his life and a fortune he never imagined. Mr. Robert patted my shoulder, said I was real man, had honored father's memory. Went back home almost running, entered screaming. Ethan and Charlotte came running, showed receipt paper. We jumped, screamed, laughed, cried, all together. Went to Mom's room, showed paper to her, said it was over, house was ours again, no one taking away. She sat in bed, sat alone for first time in months, looked at us, at her three children there in front, dirty, tired, but victorious. And she cried a lot, but was different cry. Wasn't that dead cry of before, was cry of someone feeling again, someone returning. Payment of debt was first big victory, but true miracle was seeing Mom return to life. That cry of relief and squeeze on my hand were beginning of her recovery. From there on, work routine at boarding house continued firm, and Mom, in Charlotte's care, started leaving bed, taking sun and eating with appetite. That same week, Miss Barbara called me for serious conversation in kitchen with Mr. Robert. Sun entered through windows, illuminating wooden table where we always drank coffee. She sat, crossed hands, looked at me with that look of someone weighing every word. "You have fiber, Walter. What you did with those calves," said she, firm voice, "proves you don't need odd jobs, need method and confidence." Mr. Robert went straight to point, took old notebook, opened on clean page, took pencil from pocket. "You took $400 in weak calves and transformed them into $100 profit in 3 days. That is a profit margin of almost 200% in less than a week. And everything done with honest work, clean face. Mr. Donald only dreams of having profit margin like that, so fast and safe, even stealing. His business is slow and illegal. Yours is fast and clean. We need to expand." Agreed, but my voice came out low. "But we don't have capital, Miss Barbara, and Mr. Robert also doesn't." "Miss," Barbara cut me with bitter smile. "Don't have money in pocket, Walter. That's true. If had, would have paid your debt long ago. But we have something Mr. Donald and money don't buy. Name. And name in business world is worth more than gold," she explained plan. Capital would come from loan. She had long-time contact in capital. Big merchant to whom she had been creditor in past. Honest man who respected her. She would go to him not to beg charity, but to present business plan based on my courage and proven profit margin of calves. Miss Barbara would enter with credibility. She would be guarantor of loan. Would give her good name as guarantee I would pay every cent. Mr. Robert would enter with bureaucracy, use his knowledge to draft business plan and take care of accounting, ensuring everything was on paper and legal. I would enter with risk and work. I would make trips, purchases, manual labor and sale. Accepted on spot. Wasn't charity, was partnership based on mutual faith. In 1 week, Miss Barbara and Mr. Robert returned from capital with money. Wasn't investment fund, but loan from big merchant, who believed in Miss Barbara's name and plan Mr. Robert had drawn. Miss Barbara's boarding house and Mr. Robert's name were guarantee. The boarding house became, without anyone knowing, our logistics headquarters. Small pasture in back was our cattle reform corral. Our scheme was simple and relentless. Information, Miss Barbara. She used her network of drovers and peddlers who now saw her with respect of businesswoman to get valuable information. Where to buy weak cattle at fire sale price and where to sell reformed cattle at market price. Let me explain what our reformed cattle was. We bought weak cattle at fire sale price. This meant skinny calves coming from farms with problems like drought or disease, or had just been weaned and were ugly, dull fur, full of ticks, often coughing or with diarrhea problems, were animals ranchers wanted to get rid of fast to avoid expense. Therefore, we paid very little for them. Secret of our profit was in reform process. Miss Barbara's boarding house became our treatment center. In 2 or 3 days of intense work, me and Ethan, in heavy toil, we did cleaning, removed ticks, applied worm medicine, and gave right feed. Animal didn't get to fatten really, because that takes months, but passed to have healthy appearance. Fur returned to shine. Calf stood up, alert, and seemed ready to go to pasture. When we took this calf to market, was already reformed cattle. Buyer looking saw animal that was clean and healthy, that just needed time to fatten, and not sick animal that would give loss and work. We sold quick quality and confidence of animal that wouldn't die on the way. Some might say it was a trick, but it wasn't. It was the ability to see value in what others considered trash. Just like Mrs. Barbara saw value in me when I was nothing but a dirty, desperate boy. And because of that healthy appearance and our honesty, buyer accepted paying market price, much higher value than fire sale, was proof that clean and fast work, honey, could give much more profit than slow and risky usury of Mr. Donald. We repeated operation non-stop, bought lots, reformed and sold fast. Profit was high, and we managed to pay loan in record time. And when paid first debt, merchant in capital wanted more. Offered new loan with low interest. seeing we were trustworthy. Time passed fast, without us noticing. In 5 years, was no longer boy Walter, was Walter, cattle magnate, in region. Miss Barbara retired from boarding house and became my executive partner, guaranteeing my reputation in bigger deals. Mr. Robert became my financial consultant, taking care of legality and clean accounting, ensuring I never needed loan shark. They were my partners and my family. You know, honey, when you start having money after so much hardship, first thing we want to do is fix what was broken. And that house we almost lost, continued standing, but needing affection, care we hadn't managed to give during all those years of suffering. Was right in first year of cattle business I decided we were going to renovate house. Wasn't just vanity, wasn't necessity really. Roof leaked when rained hard. Walls had cracks. Wooden floor was rotten in some corners. Was dangerous even, especially for Mom's room. Called bricklayer from village, Mr. Steve, good serviceman. He came, looked at everything, did math, said needed to change some tiles, plaster walls, fix floor, give general painting. Asked if I wanted to do right or just patch, said was to do right. That house had saved us, deserved respect. Renovation lasted almost 2 months. I paid Mr. Steve and his helpers every week, promptly. Saw house getting pretty again, way it must have been one day. New red tile on roof, smooth plaster on walls, white paint shining in sun. Inside, changed floor of rooms, gave coat of paint on doors, fixed windows that didn't close right. When ready, looked like another house. Ethan and Charlotte stood admiring, walking through rooms as if first time. Mum noticed too. She was already better at that time. Left bed, sat on porch, talked a little. Never was, same as before. That no, honey. That deep sadness had marked her forever, but at least returned to live, doing house things her way, slowly, in her time. Cooked again. Not every day, not with same energy as before, but cooked. Made those tasty beans we missed, loose rice, sautéed collard greens. Washed her clothes, arranged bed, bought new quality mattresses for all of us. Mum swept yard too, talked to us, asked how day was, if cattle sale went well. Had days she stayed quieter, more inward, and we respected. But had others she even smiled. Tiny smile, but was smile. And know what made me happiest, my daughter? Was being able to send siblings back to school. Ethan had stopped studying when Dad died. Stayed only in 3rd grade, like me, Charlotte, same thing. But now, with money coming in and Mum managing alone, didn't need them working all day with me anymore. Enrolled both in village school. Ethan was 15 and returned to 4th grade, amidst kids younger than him. Was the tallest in class. In the beginning I was ashamed, but I said, shame is not knowing how to read right, not knowing math. You go there and learn. And he went. Charlotte also at 13 returned to 3rd grade. She was smarter than Ethan, for study. Picked things up faster. They went in the morning, returned at lunchtime. In the afternoon, when possible, Ethan went with me to work a bit, but wasn't obliged anymore. Was only if wanted. Charlotte stayed home helping Mum with light tasks, or she sat under the old oak tree with her notebook, studying. Seeing them in school uniform, clean, combed, with a book bag, filled their chest with pride. My father would have liked to see that. I would have been happy knowing I didn't let siblings stay without education, without a future. But me, well, I didn't go back to school. Had stopped in 3rd grade and at 19 couldn't anymore. Knew how to read, write basics, knew math adding, subtracting, multiplying and dividing, which was what needed for business. Rest learned, in life really, in conversations with drovers, with Miss Barbara, with Mr. Robert. They taught me things school didn't teach, like negotiating, reading people, not being fooled. And so life went following its course. Business growing, house renovated, Mum better and better, siblings studying. Seemed finally we had managed to rise from that mud that had sunk us. But know what was missing? Missing me living my own life, had become man too soon. Had assumed responsibility of father of family without having been child properly. Worked. Woke up early, slept late, always thinking of next deal, next trip, next cattle lot. Had no time for anything, no time for me. Until day arrived that changed everything. Was 23 years old and hadn't dated anyone yet. Never felt that thing of liking someone for real. Had some silly flirts, but nothing serious. No time, no head for that. Was on Saturday morning. Had gone to cattle auction of Mr. Thomas, best known auctioneer in region. His auction was big, gathered rancher, merchant, people from everywhere. I was already known there. Folks respected me, knew I paid well, and on time. Arrived early, left horse tied, went to pen, where lots were to be auctioned. Was looking at some calves when heard voice calling my name. "Walter, good to see you, boy." It was Mr. Richard, Sarah's father, but I didn't know that yet. Knew him from auctions. We had done some deals together. Honest man, worker, had medium property, raised cattle and horses. We got along well, talked whenever met, greeted him, shook hand firm. He was accompanied by a young woman. And, honey, when I looked at her, world stopped. She was pretty, but wasn't just that. No, had something about her that caught my eye and didn't let go. Was 19, found out later, light brunette, dark brown hair, tied in ponytail, big and lively eyes, wore simple calico dress, but on her seemed party clothes. Had serious way, but at same time sweet, like firmness in look showing, wasn't silly girl, but also had smile in corner of mouth, making people at ease. Mr. Richard noticed I had stayed looking and gave that hearty laugh of his. "This here is my daughter, Sarah. She's helping me today at auction, noting values, doing math. Is good with numbers, this girl." Sarah extended hand to me, firm, without shame. Shook her hand and felt weird, thing in chest, like tightness, but good. Spoke my name, stuttering, which never happened to me. She smiled, small smile, but sincere. "Pleasure, Mr. Walter. My father speaks very well of you." Her voice was low, but clear, and she called me Mr. Walter, with respect, but had sparkle in eye, like teasing, like finding funny addressing me as Mr., being that wasn't that old. Mr. Richard explained Sarah worked with him now, took care of paper part, noting, helped in sales. She had studied up to high school, rare thing for country girl, and so knew reading, writing, and math very well. Father depended on her for business. We stayed chatting there a little while, the three, but me, Lord have mercy, could barely pay attention to what Mr. Richard said. Kept looking at Sarah from corner of eye, seeing way she noted in notebook, way she frowned forehead when doing math in head. She caught my look 1, 2 times and smiled. Wasn't shy girl smile, no. Was smile of someone knowing effect, causing. Auction started. We went to wooden bleachers, where folks sat to bid. I sat in corner. Mr. Richard and Sarah sat about 3 rows ahead, but I wasn't paying attention to cattle passing, wasn't paying attention to anything. Just looked at back of her neck, brown hair swinging when turned head. Way she wrote in notebook, "Fell in love, honey." Fell in love right there that hour without warning, without asking permission. Love at first sight, really. These things we think only exist in story, but exist, yes, in real life. It is rare to find a soulmate, but even rarer to find a true partner in every sense of the word. Sarah isn't just bringing love into Walter's life. She brings the sharp mind that will turn his hard work into a legacy. Just wait until you see what they build together. When auction ended late afternoon, stayed waiting, Mr. Richard and Sarah finished settling their accounts with auctioneer. Went there, heart beating strong, and called Mr. Richard aside. Said wanted to invite him and daughter to drink coffee at Mr. Frank's store nearby. I paying. Mr. Richard looked at me, then at daughter, and gave that father smile knowing what happening. He noticed, of course noticed, but said nothing, just accepted invitation. Went the 3 to store, sat at small wooden table outside, under tree. Ordered 3 coffees, and piece of cornmeal cake store owner made. We talked, but this time managed to pay attention for real. Managed to speak without stuttering. Mr. Richard told Sarah lived with him and mother on property, that she took care of house, helped in business, and was his pride. Said had raised her to be independent woman, knowing how to fend for herself, not needing to depend on anyone. Sarah turned red, told father to stop talking so much about her, but saw she liked, had pride in being like that. Then she asked about me, my family, my work, told a little, not everything, but enough for her to understand where coming from and where going. She listened with attention, asking question, showing real interest. Wasn't politeness, Just curiosity, really. And at end, when already saying goodbye, looked at me and spoke with that direct way of hers. "Hope we meet again, Mr. Walter." Said also hoped, and if Mr. Richard let, would like to visit them at property someday to talk business and other things. Mr. Richard gave that laugh again, said was welcome any day, that his house always open to good people, and was like that, honey, that started story of my great love there at that auction, that Saturday morning, when I was 23 and she 19. Father, let us know each other. Let us talk without watching like vulture, without that nonsense of girl not being able to talk to boy. He trusted daughter, trusted me, and gave space for destiny to do its thing. And destiny did. My daughter did right. No? Some people born to be together. And me and Sarah were like that. After that first meeting at auction, started seeing each other more often. Went to Mr. Richard's property, talked to him about cattle, business. But what wanted really was staying close to Sarah, hearing her speak, seeing that smile of hers. We courted 1 year exactly. Wasn't hidden courting, no. Was proper courting with blessing of father and her mother, with respect, but also with that darn will to stay together. Only who loved for real knows what is. Sarah was different from all girls I knew, my daughter. Had opinion on everything, knew business, understood numbers, and at same time was sweet, affectionate, careful. When completed 1 year we were together, asked her in marriage. Knelt on porch of Mr. 40, Richard's house, in front of him, and Miss Linda, and asked if Sarah wanted to marry me. She didn't even wait me finish speaking right. Already said yes, with those eyes shining, holding my hand tight. Married her 3 months later, at party made point being beautiful way she deserved. Wasn't rich folks' wedding from magazine, but was good party, plenty food, live music, people dancing until sun rose. Called everyone who helped me in difficult years. Miss Barbara, Mr. Robert were our best man and maid of honor, sponsors. Drovers who taught me rocky road, neighbors most alone, who didn't turn back when we in misery. Ethan and Charlotte were there, beautiful, pompous, happy. Mom also went, sat in chair near main table, with that quiet way of hers, but could see she content. That was good day. Mr. Richard and Miss Linda insisted on helping at party, treated us like family from beginning. After wedding, bought house for me and Sarah. Wasn't mansion, but was good house. Brick, with 3 bedrooms, big living room, spacious kitchen, yard with fruit tree. Was in village, near commerce. Quiet place. Renovated everything before moving. Painted walls, fixed roof, put new furniture. Wanted wife to have comfort. Sarah stopped working with father and came to work with me. And honey, was there our business turned from water to wine. I was good at business, I know. Knew buying cheap, selling dear. Had nose for weak cattle with potential, and knew soul of cowboy and buyer. But I was man of field, intuition, and courage. Sarah was head I didn't have. She had head for numbers I never saw equal. For her, Mr. Robert's cash book was easy to read, and risk of each calf was simple math. Mr. Robert was our partner of structure and guarantee. Cared for legal part, loan and general accounts, but hated hitting road and couldn't accompany me to auctions that were far. This generated serious problem. At farms and squares, buying decision is in second. Had to trust intuition, without knowing exactly how much we could squeeze bid. I lost opportunities for fear of missing math, or ended up spending little more than should. Sarah solved this. She came with me on trips, and when had person there at moment of buying decision with pen and paper in hand, doing math in heat of auction emotion, game changed. I pointed. That calf is sick, but has potential. She quickly calculated purchase cost, wormer cost, feed cost, and sale price in capital. She told me exact ceiling of bid. Walter, can only go up to $350 on this lot to keep our 200% margin. She took all that system I developed of buying weak calf, reforming fast and selling and organized properly. It's rare to find a partner who doubles your strength like that. With Sarah by his side, Walter is unstoppable. But life has one final, bittersweet lesson left to teach him about his mother. You don't want to miss this ending. We didn't lose penny anymore and started buying lots much more strategic. Was perfect partnership, leading business, from surviving to prospering for real. With her notes, discovered things didn't even imagine. For example, there was drover selling calf more expensive, but better quality. And in end of accounts, profited more with those than with cheaper ones, which took longer to fatten, had buyer paying little less, but took in larger quantity and on spot without stalling. Sarah knew doing all these counts in head or scribbled on paper and arrived at result always right. Because of her, started earning more, much more. Money coming in every month, increasing and we investing back in business. Bought more lots, increased capacity of boarding house where left cattle, made partnership with more drovers. In short time already making money, didn't even dream when started. Wasn't only survival anymore, wasn't only paying bill, was real profit. Money left over at end of month, saved money growing. When our first son was born, William, in honor of my father, felt cycle closed. Was as if father returned different way, but returned. Boy was healthy, strong, cried loud. Sarah took care of him with all love in world. And me, honey, fell in love again. This time for that little being depending on us for everything. Year and little later came Emma, quiet, wide-eyed, always observing everything. And 2 years after her came Michael in honor of father-in-law. Mischievous boy wouldn't stay still second. Was when Michael born, when had 3 small children running through house, looked at Sarah and said, we need more space and need land. Because business grew so much, we moved so much money, it didn't make sense working only with boarding house pasture, with others' pasture. Sarah agreed. She already done math, knew how much saved, how much could invest without risk. Went after land, searched, talked to people, visited properties, until I found a good farm, medium size, about 500 acres, with formed pasture, good water, board corral, headquarters house needing renovation, but solid structure. The owner needs to sell fast. Debt problem. It offered a fair price, but in cash. Accepted on spot. Bought farm, our land. Honey, when put foot on that land for the first time as owner, not employee, not visitor, but real owner, cried. Cried remembering father, remembering that one 4-year-old boy who found father hanged in a barn, passed hunger, worked until almost dying not to lose the house. And now, under 30, owner of 500 acres of good land, 3 children, intelligent, hard-working wife by side and prosperous business. Sarah hugged me, understood what meant to me. Always understood, without needing to explain. The farm changed everything again. I didn't need to pay rent to others anymore. Had own pasture, own corral, increased profit even more, cutting costs and with more space, could work more cattle at same time, increasing scale. Sarah continued commanding the administrative part, but now more responsibility. Hired help, good nanny, good cowhands, trustworthy. She paid salary, organized service, decided when to buy, when to sell. I cared more for the practical part of going to auctions, talking to drovers, and evaluating cattle. But big decisions took together. Always when third son, Michael, turned 2, already tripled the size of the herd moving. Wasn't 50, 100 calves at time anymore. Was 500, 700, 1,000. Bought in large quantities, reformed in separate lots, and sold to meat packers, big ranchers, people buying volume and paying well. Profit was high, very high. Didn't get millionaire overnight. Wasn't magic, but was fast, considering where came from. In some 5-6 years married, system running well, already had net worth passing $1 million. Farm alone worth almost that due to land appreciation happening those years. And besides, had money in motion, cattle, structure, name in market, secret, honey. Wasn't just in quantity of cattle. Had people with 10,000 heads not yielding what we yielded with 2,000. Secret was in fast turnover, high profit margin and intelligence of not leaving money sitting. Bought, reformed in 3-4 days. Sold and profit already returning to buy more. Was fast cycle, efficient, traditional ranching couldn't keep up. Sarah was key to all this. Without her, would have continued being good businessman, but wouldn't have reached where reached. She was half of everything, and always made point, everyone knew. When someone congratulated me on success, said, "Don't congratulate only me, congratulate wife too. She makes all this work." And was true, my daughter, purest truth. End of year parties, honey, were sacred moments for family, made point gathering everyone, celebrating together, thanking for another year God gave us. Sarah and mother-in-law organized everything with care, prepared bountiful table food, house all decorated, smelling fresh for party, called closest friends, those part of story, who stood with us difficult days. Miss Barbara always came, bringing homemade sweets, those kind eyes shining joy. Mr. Robert also came with family, children, grandchildren, some married. Was beautiful seeing those people who helped me when had nothing, now sitting at my table, eating well, laughing, talking. Siblings also came with their families. Ethan married good girl, from village, merchant daughter. Had 3 sons, mischievous boys, full of energy. Brother always worked with me, also very rich, paid him well, respected in region. Charlotte, youngest sister, married well with rich rancher of region, hard-working young man, traditional family. Had 2 children and lived on large property, beautiful house, everything top-notch. Seeing siblings established with families filled chest satisfaction. Had succeeded, honey, held the bar when everything collapsed, raised them, put them to study, and now they had lives, achievements. Was as if fulfilled promise made to father that terrible day. But there was one person who always stayed a bit in the corner at these parties, quiet, observing everything with a distant look. My mother, after Ethan and Charlotte married and left home, stayed alone in old house, one we renovated. Didn't want live with me and Sarah. Said used to her place, memories there, her things. We respected, visited her every week without fail. Took food, Sarah prepared, medicine when needed, money for any need. Talked to her, asked how week passed, if needing anything. Answered always same way, few words, but with guarded affection only mother has. Charlotte also visited frequently, more than Ethan, who lived farther. The 2 talked, cooked together, sometimes stood there in silence only woman understands. Mom liked moments with daughter. Saw in eyes different shine when Charlotte arrived. Was on Tuesday afternoon everything happened. Charlotte gone visit Mom, as always did. Arrived, called house, no answer. Found strange because Mom always nearby, or kitchen, room, or porch. Searched rooms, nothing. Went to yard and found her there, honey, fallen near apple tree, one she liked so much, giving fruit all year. Was face down, arms stretched, as if tried support on something. But there was something else. Under her hand, tightly gripped in her cold fingers, was an old, faded photograph. It was a picture of my father, one from before the drought, before the debts, before the darkness took him. For years, she couldn't bear to hear his name, but in her final moment, she had reached for him. It told me that she had finally found her forgiveness. She wasn't just reaching for the husband who left her, she was reaching for the peace she had been denied for so long. Seeing that photo gave me the closure I didn't know I needed. The tragedy that had defined us for decades was finally over. Charlotte screamed, ran to her, turned body, but too late. Mom had died, probably early morning, alone, in yard of her house. She was young still, 68. Charlotte came get me running, desperate, crying so much barely could speak. When managed tell, felt world spin. I drove like a madman, my heart pounding against my ribs. When I arrived, Charlotte was sitting on the porch steps, staring at a piece of paper in her hands. She wasn't crying anymore. She looked stunned. "Walter," she whispered when she saw me. Look what she was holding. I walked over to where my mother lay under the apple tree, covered by a sheet. Her hand was unclenched now, resting on her chest. Charlotte handed me the item she had taken from Mom's grip. It wasn't just a piece of paper. It was the old, crumpled letter my father had written before he died, the one I thought I had hidden away forever. But there was something else. Under the letter was a small, faded photograph of my father, one taken when they were first married, before the drought, before the debts. And on the back of the photo, in my mother's shaky handwriting, were fresh words, written perhaps just moments before she passed. "I forgive you, James. Wait for me." I fell to my knees, the tears finally coming. For decades, I thought she had died inside, because she was weak. I thought she had given up on us. But in that moment, the mystery of her silence was revealed. She hadn't been ignoring us. She had been trapped in a prison of grief and anger toward the man she loved. By holding that letter and that photo, in her final moment, she had finally found the strength to let go. She had found her peace, and reading those words, "I forgive you," I felt the heavy stone in my own heart finally crumble. The tragedy that had defined our family for 30 years was finally over. Love had won. After decades of silence, that single photograph changed everything. It's a powerful reminder that forgiveness sets us free, and Walter's story proves that even the darkest nights eventually end in a sunrise. Forgiveness can't change the past, my friends, but it sure changes the future. If you're holding on to a grudge right now, let it go, before it becomes the only thing you're holding when you close your eyes for the last time. Was devastated, my daughter, devastated in a way didn't expect, because always think prepared to lose parents. Natural, 1 hour comes, but when comes discover not prepared at all, hurt same way, leaves huge hole in chest, feel loneliest person in world, even having many other people we love. Doctor came, examined body, said, probably was heart, something sudden, fast, said didn't suffer, instantaneous, but that didn't relieve pain, no, because fact is she died alone, no one nearby, no hand to hold, no word of comfort. Held wake in her house, as she would have wanted. People came from everywhere, neighbors, acquaintances, family, friends. Miss Barbara arrived early, stayed all time my side, holding hand, praying low. Mr. Robert also came with whole family, paying respect. Ethan and Charlotte cried lot, mainly Charlotte, last to see Mom alive, carrying weight, finding her that way. Hugged sister, said not her fault. Mom lived way she wanted, place she wanted, departed in peace, in yard loved. Sarah stayed side all time, firm, caring for me, children, organizing things, knew how much that hurt me, even me not speaking much. Always knew reading silence, understanding pain without needing explain. Actually, as does until today my companion. Learned that moment, my daughter, life is this. We lose, suffer, cry, but also follow, rebuild, love, again. Because if stay stopped in pain, die along with who left, and Mum wouldn't want that, Father wouldn't want that, would want me follow, care for family, live with honor and dignity. And that's what I did, honey. Followed ahead, carrying them in heart, but without letting sadness paralyze me as paralyzed Mom, because learned hardest way possible. Life doesn't wait us recover. It follows, implacable, and we have to follow together or get left behind. Now, as I sit here looking out over my 500 acres and my happy family, I realize a truth that is both bitter and full of hope. True wealth doesn't come from how much money you earn. It comes from how much dignity you keep when the storms of life crash down upon you. My grandfather's 5 coins didn't feed us, but his cruelty taught me how to stand on my own 2 feet. And more importantly, my mother's revival after my father's death taught me a vital lesson. It is never too late to forgive and start your life over. Even when you think you've lost everything, as long as you have breath in your lungs, you still have a chance to turn the tables. Never let anyone, whether it's a relative or a creditor, dictate your worth. Thank you for listening to the confessions of an old man who has lived through it all. If this story touched your heart, please subscribe to the channel and share this video. May God bless you all.